Carrie wants to talk about the stages that children grieve through, and there's 3 big stages that she's going to address.
The
disorganization.
Yeah. The 3 stages for children are this disorganization, the second is called transition, and the third is reorganization. And it's really important to remember that each child moves through these at their own pace. They won't do them all together. There isn't a too short or too long. It really is dependent upon where the child is at.
When you look at the idea of disorganization, you can imagine the child is going through the grief period of who am I? How I no longer identify with the family because now we're broken up. There's mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
So the initial expressions of grief in a child, they can range from regression to temper tantrums, exaggerated fears, and
in younger children.
In younger children, they may have lack of concentration. They may have mood swings,
right?
Especially if it's older children,
right? And
then the disorganization of early grief sometimes puts children in a crisis,
right?
Both parents love them, but they feel like, my God, I'm going to lose them. Who's going to take care of me? And that can be a pretty tough time. But that pretty much is the main way that children experience that notion of disorganization.
That's the disorganization. For them, life has become chaotic. Mm-hmm. Disorganization, chaos. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what's going on. The routine has been changed and broken, and they, just like mom and dad at the beginning, are like,
Likewise,
the second stage,
transition,
is called transition.
Yeah,
I got it. And here children may experience a feeling of hopelessness, helplessness, and despair. And when you think about that, kids don't really have control of their lives. Parents have control of their lives, and if parents are figuring out what's going on, kids are being taken along, put along, moved to a new school, not in contact with friends and that kind of thing, and they feel it and act it. They may despair and follow the stress and chaotic behaviors of the disorganization stage. And usually that's when you'll see this hopelessness, helplessness kind of thing happen as they're coming out of feeling like they're in chaos.
You might actually identify in older children the idea that there's depression. Younger children, you have to look for different symptoms, but the older children, you might be able to identify, some of that idea of the sleeplessness and lack of affect, and the idea that they may find themselves eating too much or not eating, or sleeping too much or not sleeping. But those signs are there. And
a key identifier with kids is to watch what's going on in school, because as they aren't able to focus, or they're having issues dealing, they also get frustrated, and lots of times the teachers are noticing, or their schoolwork is suffering because of what's going on with them.
And then finally, that idea, the third area we're looking at is, of course, reorganization. And here now, when the painful feelings are expressed, their emotional energy wanes and detachment becomes possible. Children can detach. You can sense that, in your children, you've seen that detachment when it occurs. And it's something that a parent's got to be aware of, and it's that you must tend to that as it occurs. Also, that during the stage, it's quite possible for the children to have more energy. There's a little bit more motivation to move forward. They're trying to find possible resolutions for them in their grief. Hopefully they're talking to you more at this point.
Sure. So there's some, with reorganization, there's some mental settling down. Their life should be settling down, and there should be some reestablishment of a routine or an expectation in life with mom and dad, or mom and dad, kind of thing. That's what you'd expect to see there. And children, their emotions follow that.
Now, how do preschoolers express grief? And I'll give you some bold statements in there, but here they are already. Bedwetting, thumb sucking, clinging to adults, exaggerated fears, excessive crying, temper tantrums, regression, stubbornness.
Yeah.
I mean, there's about, that's 9 different things that you would see, but those are the way you would identify it.
Right.
When you're trying to help a grieving preschooler,
right,
you want to always be there to answer the child's questions honestly and simply.
Yeah. Remember where they're at. They need a little answer.
Allow them to talk about the loss. Help them share their fears and their worries. Provide simple routines. That's so important.
Right.
Structure, places to be, times to be there.
Yep.
Give the child affection, nurturing, and attempt to connect with them wherever you can.
And then provide them opportunities for play.
That's
Lots
so
of
important.
times if you're playing with them or interacting with them as you're playing with them, you can see what's going on, because that's how they process stuff at preschool. They're playing to work out what's going on with them and figuring out how to problem solve.
When we move up to how elementary school children express grief, Now we're looking for, school or learning problems, preoccupation with loss, related worries, daydreaming, trouble paying attention.
Right.
You'll still see the idea of bedwetting, some regression, developmental delays, maybe problems with reading, problems with math and social sciences where they should be a little bit further ahead. The idea of eating and sleeping problems, they either overeat, refuse to eat, sleeping problems, have nightmares, may not want to be alone in their room.
Right.
And then one of the things we see a lot of, which is fighting with the other kids because they're holding in all these anger issues. And although they can't take them out with mom and dad, you take them out with the other children.
Out with other kids.
As we look into how do we help grieving children in elementary school, Carrie's going to give you some of those examples.
You want to keep tasks simple. You don't multitask. You don't give multiple instructions. You do one thing. When you have new things you need them to do, they need to have experienced them, and they need to do that with you. So like a new neighborhood, let's go there. Let's look around. Let's go outside and see who's here. Same thing with the school, the church, the family routines. Keep it simple. Provide a structured environment that's predictable and consistent. It's okay to have expectations of your children. Here's your area. Here's what happens, or here's what I need you to do when you're with me. This is how our family looks over here. Limit the number of choices. Don't give them the world. Give them 2 or 3 choices. Introduce small, manageable choices over time. Contain acting out behavior. Don't let them get away with it because you feel bad about, we're getting divorced. That doesn't help kids. Insist that they, talk about what they want and what they need and how they're feeling with their words, and not just allow them to act out by hitting, punching, stomping off, that kind of thing.
And then finally encourage them to let you know when they get worried and when they're having a difficult time. We're going to move now to preteens and how to evaluate preteens, early adolescents that are expressing grief.
Yeah.
Typically, you're looking for the easy to easy identify physical signs. So headaches, sleeping, eating disorders, hypochondria. I always feel like I'm sick. There's always something wrong.
Right.
An ability to be able to verbally express emotions. That's important if they
have identified what feelings are, and lots of times the feeling that they're having, they have attached to a word, so they can tell you that they're angry or that they're frustrated or that you're annoying me or you're picking on me. They'll tell you what it is that they're feeling at this stage.
We're looking for them to if you will, talk about these feelings of hopelessness, but also be aware of the increased in risk-taking and self-destructive behavior, like climbing out the window, doing reckless type things that kids shouldn't be doing.
Sure.
Look for evidence of anger, fighting oppositional behavior. If you see your children withdrawing from adults, if you see them withdrawing in such ways that because they are sad, because they are isolating or showing signs of depression, if there's lack of concentration, or at least, if you will, your ability to identify that, look for identity confusion. Maybe they don't know, how to cope with this idea of changing their last name and their residence and stuff like that.
Right.
When we come back, we're going to talk about how we help with grieving teenagers and work our way through some of these other things. Before we move into the rest of our show, hey, I'm Dr. Pilet.
And I'm Carrie Pilet.
We'll talk to you in just a minute. Welcome back to our show. Carrie's going to finish up by doing the last part of how to help a preteen.
We're going to look at helping preteens and adolescents as they deal with parental divorce. First, we really need to expect that they'll experience mood swings and physical symptoms. They're going to look a lot more like us than the younger kids are, and we should see that and expect it. We need to encourage them to be honest with their painful feelings and help them to find positive outlets. We need to listen to the feelings behind their words. This is the first time we've said that. I need to be paying attention to how you feel about what you're telling me about, not about what you're telling me about. I need to look behind.
Good point, Carrie.
And then respond with empathy. We need to put ourselves in their shoes so that we understand where they're coming from. We need to be truthful and factual in explaining the loss to them. They're going to need a bigger answer than the preschooler. They really are going to want some depth.
No, tell the truth as much as possible.
And we need to be working to help them to develop and maintain their sense of identity. So their friends are important to stay in contact if they move schools. The people that are close to them need to be maintained in their life. It is part of their identity. We can't just pick them up and move them because they have memory.
Just as a caveat when I say be truthful. Use I statements. This is not about being critical of the other person. It's about saying I wasn't happy. I needed to move on. I needed to find other. We weren't going to work out our differences. But being truthful doesn't mean to evaluate or grade the other person to the point of making things tougher and more difficult for the child. Okay?
Right. And then finally, we need to allow them to make choices that are not harmful. So we still want to keep them safe. We may have to change what their independence looks like to accommodate for what's changed in the family, but we need to be prepared to do that.
And then one final consideration is that you have to understand that children have a biological age and then they have a chronological age. So, your child may not be as mature an adult and may be in a little bit of a regression. The way that they're accepting the loss may be a few years behind their biological age. But it's important to recognize, where they are and how they're doing with adapting and coping to the notion of divorce of the family and to, beginning again, getting through this process and how do we start in a different direction.
Right.
As we pick up the second part of